Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be looking at this book, Buddha's Brain,
Yes.
by Rick Hanson and Richard Mendius, and
Excellent book.
it's kind of a fascinating exploration of how our understanding of neuroscience can help us
Yeah,
cultivate, greater happiness and love and wisdom in our lives.
that's right. Blending modern science and ancient wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So the book kind of starts out with this idea of like the evolving brain.
Uh-huh.
And it uses this analogy of like a lizard, squirrel, monkey brain.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break that down for us?
Yeah. So imagine your brain is like this layered organ, right?
Okay.
And at the very base is the oldest part, the lizard brain.
Uh-huh.
And that's really responsible for our survival instincts like fight, flight, freeze,
Right.
keeping us safe, things like that.
So that's why we like jumping a loud sound or,
Exactly.
instinctively pull our hand away from a hot stove.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's very reactive. Then kind of layered on top of that is what they call the squirrel brain.
Oh.
And that's more about emotions and social behavior. So
Okay.
seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, forming bonds,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So we've got like survival emotions and social stuff.
Yeah.
And then what's the monkey all about?
Yeah. So then the monkey brain is the cortex,
Okay.
particularly the frontal lobe.
Hmm.
That's where more of the higher level thinking happens.
Gotcha.
Planning, decision-making, self-awareness.
Okay. So it's kind of like our monkey brain helps us think things through and plan for the future
Yeah.
and control those like impulses from the lizard and squirrel brain.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Awesome.
But what's really interesting is that all of these parts of the brain work together.
Right.
So it's not like one turns off and the other one turns on. They're all very interconnected.
Right. So like we have these incredible capabilities for, higher level thinking and emotional regulation, but,
Yeah.
We can still be, influenced by those primal instincts.
That's right. It's like a tug of war sometimes.
Totally. Yeah. Like when,
Yeah,
you should be rational, but your emotions are just taking over.
exactly.
Because your brain is throwing a tantrum or something.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of the practices from the book come in
Yeah. Okay.
to help kind of manage those different parts of ourselves.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found really interesting in the book was this concept of impermanence.
Yes.
This idea that everything is in constant flux.
Uh-huh.
Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so, in both Buddhist traditions and in neuroscience, there's this understanding that everything in our body, brain and mind, is part of a dynamic system that's constantly changing, seeking equilibrium.
Right.
It's like a flowing river, right? It's
Yeah.
never the same from one moment to the next.
Okay.
And they even talk about like a single neuron, like a serotonin neuron.
Yeah.
There's constant change happening even at that microscopic level. And this ties in with the Buddhist concept of impermanence.
Yeah.
Which is the idea that, things are constantly changing and that our suffering arises from our attempts to make things permanent.
Right. Like cling to them as if there's going to change.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to grasp water,
Yeah.
The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers.
Yeah. It makes me think of that quote, like, no man ever steps in the same river twice.
Exactly.
For he's not the same man and it's not the same river.
That's right. Yeah. Beautiful quote.
Yeah. And it's, it's kind of a powerful insight to realize that maybe if we can let go a little bit,
Yeah.
embrace the flow of change,
Yeah.
it might actually lead to less suffering.
That's exactly what the book suggests.
Cool.
It encourages us to become more comfortable with the impermanent nature of things
Right.
and to see change not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth and transformation. And this leads us to another really important concept in the book, which is the two darts of suffering.
The two darts. Okay. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so imagine you're walking through life and you get hit by a dart.
Ouch.
Yeah, so that first dart represents the unavoidable pain that life throws our way.
Okay.
So, think physical pain, emotional hurt, disappointments, loss.
The inevitable stuff.
Exactly. The stuff we can't really control.
Right. So the first dart is kind of like just the pain of being human.
That's right.
Okay. What about the second dart?
So the second dart is our reaction to that pain.
Okay.
It's the mental anguish, the stories we tell ourselves, the resistance and resentment.
Yeah.
We kind of layer on top of that initial experience.
So it's like getting stung by a bee. That's the first dart.
Yeah.
But then getting all like angry and upset about it and dwelling on it.
Exactly.
That's the second dart.
That's the second dart, and that's where a lot of our suffering comes from.
Ouch. Yeah. I can see how that second dart can really
Yeah.
amplify the pain.
Amplify it. That's right. Yeah.
So we're basically like adding insult to injury
Yeah, we're making it worse.
by our own reaction to it.
Exactly. And the book goes deeper explaining the physiological mechanisms of this second dart suffering,
Okay.
talking about the sympathetic nervous system, the HPA axis,
Right.
and how, when we get caught up in those second dart reactions,
Mhm.
we're essentially flooding our systems with stress hormones.
Gotcha. So it's like we're constantly, in this state of fight or flight.
That's right.
And that's not good for us long term.
Not good for us long term. And the book highlights how this can lead to a whole host of problems: anxiety, depression, insomnia, even weakened immunity.
Right. It's like we're just constantly on edge.
Exactly.
So how do we stop those second darts from flying?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And while we can't always avoid the first dart, the unavoidable pain of life, the book suggests that we can learn to manage our reactions.
Okay.
We can learn to lessen the impact of those second darts. And one of the most powerful tools for doing that is a practice called taking in the good.
Taking in the good. Okay, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
That sounds much more pleasant than the two darts of suffering.
It's about intentionally focusing on and absorbing positive experiences to counterbalance our brain's natural negativity bias.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not about, pretending that bad things don't happen. It's more about like intentionally shifting our focus to good stuff.
Exactly. It's like creating a mental highlight reel of all the positive things in our lives.
Yeah, like building up a reservoir of positive emotions and experiences
That's a great analogy.
that we can draw on when things get tough.
Exactly, because our brains are wired to focus on threats and negative information.
Right.
We need to make a conscious effort to notice and savor the good things.
So how do we actually take in the good? Do we like keep a gratitude journal or something?
That's certainly one way to do it,
Okay.
but it can also be as simple as pausing to appreciate a beautiful sunset, savoring a delicious meal, or really taking in the feeling of joy when you connect with a loved one.
Right.
The key is to really pay attention,
Okay.
to let those positive experiences sink in and become embedded in our neural circuitry.
So we're essentially rewiring our brains for happiness.
Exactly, rewiring our brains for happiness, one positive experience at a time.
One positive experience at a time. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the book highlights how this practice can actually strengthen the neural pathways associated with well-being and resilience.
Wow.
It's like building a stronger foundation for a happier, more fulfilling life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and this all ties in with the idea of activating our parasympathetic nervous system,
Okay.
the rest and digest system.
Right. Because when we're stressed out, it's like our sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response
That's right.
kicks in.
Kicks in, exactly.
So how do we kind of activate that calming system?
Yeah.
Besides taking in the good?
Yeah, well, deep breathing is one of the most effective and accessible ways to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. Even just a few slow, deep breaths
Yeah.
can help shift us out of that fight or flight mode.
Okay. Deep breaths.
No.
Got it. What else?
The book also talks about heart rate variability training, or HRV,
Okay.
which involves consciously controlling your breathing to influence your heart rate.
Interesting. So by regulating our breath, we can actually influence our heart rate
Exactly.
and calm our nervous system.
Exactly. And there are a number of apps and devices that can help you with HRV training.
Cool.
But even simple practices like mindfulness of the body, paying attention to the physical sensations of breathing, or simply noticing the feeling of your feet on the ground can help activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, it's like we're giving our nervous system a break from all the stress and stimulation of modern life.
Exactly.
Awesome. And then when we feel, safer and calmer,
Yeah,
we're less reactive, we're more resilient,
that's right.
and we're just better able to handle whatever life throws our way.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important concept from the book, which is finding refuge.
Refuge like a safe haven.
Yeah, like a safe haven.
Tell me more.
Finding refuge is about identifying those sources of strength and comfort that help us navigate challenging times.
Okay.
It can be people, activities, places, or even intangible qualities like reason or truth.
Okay, so for me, curling up with a good book is a total refuge.
Yeah.
It's my escape from the world.
Yeah.
What are some other examples?
It could be spending time in nature, listening to calming music, practicing yoga or meditation, or even just connecting with a loved one.
Yeah.
The key is to find those things that truly nourish you, that bring you a sense of peace and stability.
It's like creating a mental safe space
Exactly.
you can go to whenever you need a break.
Exactly. And the book encourages you to identify your own personal refuges
Right.
and explore how it feels to connect with them.
Okay.
What truly brings you a sense of peace and grounding? What helps you feel safe and supported?
Yeah. And I feel like this also kind of ties into this idea of cultivating inner strength.
Yes, absolutely.
It's like once we've kind of found that inner sanctuary,
Yeah.
that place of refuge,
Right.
we can start to like build the strength we need to face life's challenges.
You're spot on. Cultivating inner strength is about developing a sense of resilience, confidence, and self-reliance.
Yeah.
It's about knowing that we have the resources within ourselves to handle whatever comes our way.
Yeah. And the book even like guides you through an exercise to help internalize this feeling of strength, right?
It does. It encourages you to recall a time when you felt strong and capable, to really relive that experience and let that feeling sink in.
Right.
You know, remember that time you aced that presentation at work even though you were nervous? Or that time you finally finished that marathon you'd been training for? Those are moments of inner strength that we can draw on when we need a boost.
Yeah. It's like we're building a mental muscle.
Exactly.
The more we kind of exercise it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And the book suggests that cultivating inner strength can help us navigate difficult situations and emotions with more grace and resilience. It's about knowing that even when things get tough, we have the inner resources to cope, to adapt, and to keep moving forward.
And I feel like this kind of leads us to another key concept, which is equanimity.
Yes.
It's like the next level up from inner strength.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Equanimity is a state of mental balance and composure, even in the face of changing circumstances.
Right.
It's about not getting swept away by the ups and downs of life, but rather maintaining a sense of calm and clarity amidst the chaos.
It sounds amazing, but also kind of unattainable.
Yeah.
Like, is it really possible to be that calm and centered all the time?
Well, it's not about being emotionless or suppressing our feelings.
Okay.
It's more about developing a balanced perspective
Gotcha.
and reducing our reactivity so we're not constantly tossed around by the waves of our emotions.
So with equanimity, you're kind of like not letting external events
Exactly.
dictate your internal state.
Exactly.
You're choosing how you respond
That's right.
rather than just reacting automatically.
That's right. You're
Yeah,
taking back control.
Awesome. And the book, talks about the benefits of equanimity, reduced stress, increased resilience, greater sense of peace of mind.
That's right.
It even suggests that equanimity can make us more effective in our relationships and our work
Yeah,
because we're not letting our emotions
exactly.
kind of cloud our judgment
That's right.
or sabotage our interactions.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. And I feel like from equanimity,
Yeah.
the book kind of naturally progresses to the importance of empathy and compassion.
Yes, absolutely. Empathy and compassion are foundational for healthy relationships and a more compassionate world.
Yeah. Seems like the world could use a little more compassion these days.
Couldn't agree more. And the book beautifully explains how empathy involves understanding another person's inner world
Right.
by simulating their actions, feelings, and thoughts.
So you're really putting yourself in their shoes,
Exactly.
trying to experience the world from their perspective.
That's right. And the book highlights specific techniques for developing empathy, like attentive listening, nonverbal mirroring, and perspective taking.
So you're not just passively observing.
Right.
You're actively, engaging
That's right.
with the person's experience.
That's right.
Cool.
And what's really cool is that the book connects compassion to specific brain regions, the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula,
Okay.
emphasizing how cultivating compassion strengthens these areas.
It's like a workout for your empathy muscles.
Exactly. A workout for your empathy muscles. That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, the book also kind of acknowledges that we have this evolutionary, us versus them mentality, right?
Yeah.
Like we're kind of wired for tribalism and, potentially hate and aggression.
Yeah, that's right.
How do we kind of reconcile that with cultivating compassion?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the book tackles it head on.
Okay.
It uses a story called the Judaica tale of the gorilla and the hunter.
Wait, what's the story about the gorilla and the hunter?
Yeah, so in this tale, a hunter falls into a pit and can't get out. He calls for help for days, and eventually the Buddha, in the form of a gorilla, comes to his rescue.
Oh.
The gorilla carefully lowers himself into the pit and helps the hunter escape.
Okay.
But as the gorilla is resting, the hunter sees an opportunity and, driven by fear and hunger, kills the gorilla.
No.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tragic story.
Yeah, what happens next?
So as the gorilla is dying, he looks at the hunter with tears in his eyes and says, "Poor man, now you'll never be happy."
Wow.
Yeah, it's a powerful story that highlights the destructive power of fear and their self-centered us versus them mentality, right?
Yeah. So what does that have to do with cultivating compassion?
So the book uses this story to illustrate the challenges we face in overcoming our ingrained biases and extending compassion to those we perceive as other.
Right.
But it also offers hope by suggesting that we can train our minds to widen the circle of our compassion,
Okay.
to recognize the shared humanity in all beings.
So it's about choosing to feed the wolf of compassion rather than the wolf of hate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the book goes on to discuss specific techniques for transforming ill will into goodwill, like recognizing the humanity of others, challenging our biases, and actively cultivating loving kindness.
Yeah.
It's about making a conscious effort to see beyond our differences and connect with our shared human experience.
Okay. That makes sense. But cultivating compassion for everyone can feel kind of overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
I think it starts with ourselves.
Okay.
You know, the book emphasizes the importance of self-compassion as a foundation for extending compassion to others.
Right. So, like, we can't really give what we don't have.
Exactly. We need to cultivate compassion for ourselves first.
And how do we do that?
Well, it starts with recognizing that we're all imperfect.
Okay.
We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right. It's part of being human.
It's part of being human, and instead of beating ourselves up for our shortcomings,
Yeah.
we can practice offering ourselves kindness and understanding.
Okay. So it's like treating ourselves with the same compassion and care
Exactly.
that we would offer to a good friend.
Exactly. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
And from there, we can start to extend that compassion outwards.
Okay. So, like, start with ourselves and then kind of ripple it out.
Exactly. Ripple it out to our loved ones, to our community, to the world.
Correct.
And all of these practices that we've been talking about, mindfulness, concentration, taking in the good, cultivating inner strength,
Yeah.
they all support the development of compassion.
Okay. So it's kind of like a holistic approach.
It is a holistic approach. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so much of what we've been talking about seems to come down to mindfulness, like being more present and aware of our thoughts and feelings.
Yes, absolutely.
How does Buddha's brain kind of approach the concept of mindfulness?
Well, the book really emphasizes the importance of mindfulness for cultivating all those positive qualities that we've been discussing: compassion, equanimity, resilience, even happiness.
Right.
It explains how mindfulness is about paying attention to your present moment experience with curiosity and without judgment.
Okay. So not getting swept away by our thoughts or emotions, but rather just kind of observing them without judgment.
Without judgment, just noticing them as they arise and pass away.
Easier said than done.
It definitely takes practice.
Yeah.
But the book offers some really helpful guidance. It highlights how we can practice mindfulness in everyday life,
Okay.
bringing awareness to routine activities like brushing your teeth, washing the dishes, even walking down the street.
Right. So just like finding those little pockets of peace and presence in our...
Exactly, finding those little moments throughout the day
Yeah.
to bring in that awareness.
Cool. But the book also talks about concentration, right?
Yes.
And I always thought of those two things as kind of being opposites.
Yeah.
Like, mindfulness is about being open to everything,
Yeah.
and concentration is about focusing on one thing.
Right, it's a common misconception.
Okay.
Actually, the book suggests that mindfulness and concentration work together to strengthen our attention.
Okay. How so?
Well, think of it this way. Mindfulness helps us become aware of our distractions, and concentration helps us train our minds to stay focused.
Okay. So mindfulness is kind of like the foundation.
Yeah.
And then concentration builds upon that.
Exactly. Mindfulness lays the groundwork,
Huh.
and then concentration builds upon that foundation to create a more focused, resilient mind.
Got it.
And the book explains how concentration can help us develop deeper understanding, greater clarity, and enhanced self-awareness.
Okay.
It's like a mental laser beam,
Yeah.
you know, cutting through the clutter and distractions to illuminate what truly matters.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one concept in the book that still kind of like boggles my mind a little bit.
Okay.
This idea of the illusion of self.
Yes.
Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah, so the book dives into this idea that our sense of self, the I that we think we are, is not a solid, unchanging entity.
Yeah.
Instead, it's a mental construct, a
Mhm.
collection of thoughts, feelings, and experiences that are constantly changing.
So it's like the self is a story we tell ourselves
Exactly.
to kind of make sense of the world.
Exactly. A narrative we create to make sense of the world and our place in it.
But if the self is an illusion,
Yeah, how do we reconcile that with our human need for like a sense of identity and belonging?
yeah, well, the book suggests that by understanding the impermanent nature of the self, we can loosen our grip on that rigid sense of I
Okay.
and experience greater freedom and peace.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we are more than just our thoughts and feelings,
Right.
more than our stories and labels.
Right, we're part of something bigger.
Exactly. We're part of something much larger, something interconnected and ever-changing.
It's like we're not separate islands, but rather like waves in a vast ocean,
That's a beautiful image.
all interconnected.
Exactly. And it reminds us that we are all connected, not just on a spiritual level, but also on a physical level. And this brings us back to the importance of nourishing our brains,
Okay.
both literally and figuratively.
So we're talking about like food and supplements again.
Yes. But it goes beyond that. The book emphasizes the importance of feeding our minds with positive experiences, with things that uplift and inspire us, with connections that nourish our hearts and souls. Yeah, so it's about choosing to focus on the good, cultivating gratitude,
Exactly.
surrounding ourselves with people who lift us up.
Exactly. Creating a life that supports our well-being, both physically and emotionally.
Awesome.
It's about remembering that we are worthy of happiness, worthy of love, worthy of a life that is filled with meaning and purpose.
I love that.
Yeah, it's about remembering that we're all interconnected and that, our actions have an impact on others. And so, it's about cultivating that sense of kindness and compassion, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
Yeah, I love that this has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the evolution of our brains to the power of cultivating, mindfulness, compassion, equanimity.
Yeah.
What's one key takeaway that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think that the most important message from Buddha's brain is that we have more power than we realize to shape our own brains and create a life filled with greater happiness, love, and wisdom.
Yeah.
The insights from the book really show us that it's not about achieving some perfect state of enlightenment, but rather it's an ongoing journey of learning and growing and transforming ourselves.
Yeah.
One mindful breath, one compassionate act, one moment of equanimity at a time.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Buddha's brain.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope you'll continue exploring these ideas and discovering the incredible potential that lies within your own mind. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep cultivating your own inner peace and wisdom.